Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to talk about sustainability and climate change and the urgency that we face to take some action. I regard these as essentially axiomatic. We have to tackle this. When I sat down at a cafe with Andrew some months ago, and he talked about the performance tool, and I'm always interested in what Green Building Council's doing. And I started to have one of those lovely light bulb aha moments. And what I want to talk very briefly about is from a completely different perspective, and that is really from an owner or investor or manager of a portfolio and indeed individual assets, and the sort of challenges they face going forward, and why, in my opinion, this performance tool is a game changer. This is one of the most exciting initiatives that's occurred in the commercial property world, certainly for many years, and I really must commend Green Building Council of Australia and New Zealand for doing this. Traditionally, ladies and gentlemen, owners and investors of portfolios, and let's think more about what in Australia we'd regard as REITs, a real estate investment trust, or in New Zealand an LPT listed property trust that's tradable on the stock exchange. The key drivers that an investment portfolio manager is thinking about traditionally is the legendary alpha and the beta. The beta is that magical management of risk factor, and the alpha is trying to drive maximum performance out of the portfolio and out of individual assets in particular. Now, this, simply put, is actually quite a simple business, really. An owner of a portfolio of buildings, they want to see capital growth of the asset, and they want to maximise income return in the form of rents. And often listen to experts in this field, and they talk about this in very jargon-laden terms, but it's really very simple. You want the value of the asset to go up, and you want to earn lots of rent. But in practice, that's quite a tricky game. Now, there are certain things that we can't kind of control or talk about here today. Obviously, the location of the asset is something, though, even in the rating tool here, proximity to transport nodes and stuff like that is an important fact. But there's going to be other issues about availability of debt and leverage and so on. Those are not issues we need to touch on. But a portfolio manager or asset manager then is going to be thinking about, how do I actually select the right individual stock in my portfolio? Have I got the right configuration in the portfolio? And we've just heard from Nicole that this tool measures, for example, retail, industrial, offices, and so forth. So it's the right mix. And how do I manage risk and assessing all that? And the magic kind of ratio, the crude ratio, is always the cap rate, the magical ratio between income and value. So it's actually, in practice, it's quite a tricky business, and owning buildings, deciding whether to retain, redevelop, or sell is always a tough decision, because buildings are large, expensive, and complex beasts to deal with. And we've got around some 41,000 of these things in New Zealand. So where can they make progress? We've talked for some years, and we've had what was the Investment Property Data Bank, IPD, and more recently the Property Council's Index is managed by Morgan Stanley, MSCI out of New York. Over the years, they've done some research that indicates that there seems to be a relationship between a sustainability rating, whether it be LEED or Green Star, and the actual cap rate compression, the performance of the investment. Maybe not a very clear causal relationship, but there's certainly something going on there that looked very interesting. One of the issues that looked intriguing was actually the capital value seemed to be better if it was a Green Star rated as opposed to not. Though a lot of modern buildings that have just been developed are probably, especially offices, would have a Green Star rating in New Zealand from the Green Building Council, so maybe there was just a newness factor in there, and it was a bit difficult to clean that out. But there's still a very strong suspicion that there's a very positive effect occurring from a Green Star rating. But there's something easier, and that's to do with income stream. And the other measure in here is depending on which jurisdiction you're actually in, but essentially is the weighted average lease term, which is a crude way of saying happy customers and happy tenants. Now, this is where, when I was sitting down with Andrew and we're talking this through, and I had that light bulb aha moment, as I suddenly saw traditional ways of managing an investment portfolio and the performance tool suddenly can hold hands and dance together. There is something very, very powerful in this. This, I think, is a game changer. So, what's actually happening? Well, I recently read a paper published in the United States by two kind of analysts in this space, Brenna Walraven and Catherine Lai, who did some research on some key assets around the world, looking at 111 Eagle in Brisbane, the Jiaming Centre in Beijing, and the Shard in London in particular, looking at the performance. What makes those assets so spectacular? Well, it's happy customers, ladies and gentlemen. It's good old-fashioned customer service. And what do happy customers in a commercial building world want? They want to feel proud of the building they're in. They want to feel safe. Issues like wellness are really important. No, it's a sense of personal satisfaction. I'm proud to be working in the Shard in London. That's a really neat asset. And I know if something goes wrong in my asset, there's a team of 14 staff sitting down in the basement in the Shard, monitoring every single LED in that building, minute by minute, and knowing exactly if that LED is going to fail, and they'll have a person up to replace that bulb within the hour. That's customer service, managing quality of indoor air, all those sorts of things. So traditional managers have been thinking, why is it in the commercial world, and particularly in the office world, do landlords treat their tenants with contempt? Why do we still do this stuff? It's ridiculous. Why don't we adopt an alternative kind of paradigm? Why can't we be like a boutique hotel, where customer service becomes the key driver? Sounds good, sounds logical. So we've got a paradigm shift that has to occur within the commercial property world. But we need some way of measuring that paradigm shift to know if it's going to work. And we know that the performance of the building is the big gap that's been there. Nicole showed you the Australian methodologies, and the same ones in New Zealand. The as designed and as built tools are great, but they're well not enough. It's once actually you're building a new asset, and New Zealand law, code of compliance certificates issued, tenants move in, how we manage the performance of that asset going forward, because the one big win for a portfolio or asset owner is going to be happy tenancies. It's going to be a longer weighted average lease time, because that is going to improve the rental stream, and that is going to achieve cap rate compression. And if you are an investor where the money is coming from, for example, a superannuation fund in New Zealand, we have a large exposure into KiwiSaver superannuation in our commercial property. That's the measure and the driver from a purely commercial point of view they're going to be looking for. Something's happened here today, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's good. Thank you.